I think we have 57 participants. All right, we can get started. So welcome everyone to this webinar session. We will be providing some updates on a new sample submission tool for CGIAR shared services. This is a pre-launch event. It's not an official launch yet. We're still doing some testings and some fine-tuning of potential features to be added. But we appreciate everybody's time to join us for this event. In terms of the flow of the webinar, I will kickstart the webinar by giving everybody a quick update of on the scope and expectations of this tool, and then I'll hand over to Nick for a demo on how to submit a job through the sample submission tool. Without further ado, I will switch over to my next slide. All right, this is a cover slide. So again, during this the entire session of the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to I think you have the raise hand feature, or type your message into the chat box. My colleagues Rajaguru and Anna will help to monitor the chat messages, and you can, like I said, always raise hands if you prefer to ask a question live. So now the scope of this sample submission tool. It is an important step that we're taking right now. Because we really are looking forward to a more uniform way to support sample submission in the for the CGIAR shared services. Potentially, this tool will solely also in the coming months evolve into a much larger sample or sort of like a shared service portal for the CGIAR Breeding Resources Initiative. I can already name a few services that we potentially would like to bring on to that platform. Including our newly established genomic resequencing services, whole genome assembly services, as well as some other quality analysis services. Those are all in the pipeline and should be made available on the same tool or marketplace in the very near future. Now, why that switch? So this is a much needed switch, as for the past few years we've been managing shared services, primarily the low and mid-density genotyping platforms. With everybody's support, the user base has grown quite tremendously over time. And routinely now we're managing service requests coming from various CGIAR centers, national program partners, universities, and even to some extent private seed companies and users. So we also now have available marker tools of more than 19 crop and animal species on our platform, and actually a few other species are in the pipeline to be added to the shared platform. Now with that, manual order submission, previously with Excel files, sending by email is really starting to become a bottleneck. Because it's very error prone, and response time sometimes can suffer because during peak hours or people are away, it can be, you know, there could be a gap in our response time. So we want to make sure that we maintain the quality of services to all the users. Now, the expectations for CGIAR shared services, collective bargaining is always our key strength in keeping the prices low, so that the benefit is passed on to a wider audience or user base. It is also important that we maintain a standard workflow, starting from ordering to the logistics, to ensure that there is minimum human intervention, so that we can translate this competitive pricing to the end users. Having an online tool will also enable greater independence and accessibility, as it allows us to better market the entry point to the CGIAR shared services to a wider audience. And in terms of support, once the tool is fully rolled out, users and service coordinators will be able to also monitor and track submission progress, for each and every single job, because this is now a database. Soon these features will have a demo, and some of the features will be shown by our colleague Nick. And one thing to also point out is that one useful feature that is very important for CGIAR service coordination unit is that we can now easily track and review the usage statistics. And that is really important for us to periodically look into the services, redesign, reposition our pricing structures and services based on what is needed by majority of the users out there, so that we can maintain that the best I guess service setup for when it's needed. So before I hand over to Nick for the online demo, I do want to point out that I know many people have asked about some features. So this is the first minimum viable implementation for the submission tool. Over the past couple months, we have been collecting some really useful feedbacks and suggestions for feature enhancements from a couple of our early adopters. And we have taken in these useful suggestions, and these updates will be rolled out in a phased manner in the coming months. Some of these key features would likely include a marker database so that users can select markers based on crops or platforms of choice. Potentially also interoperability with the CGIAR enterprise breeding system, and likely also potentially some preliminary data visualization and analysis functionalities. All these are in the pipeline. We're planning for these features, and they will be rolled out, and more updates on these will come for this submission tool. Again, before I hand over the floor to Nick, please type in your questions if you have any, and raise hands if you want to ask live questions. Thanks. I'll hand over to you, Nick. I'll stop sharing.
Great. Thanks very much, Eng. So my name is Nick Berger. I'm the product owner on Scriptoria's side. So I deal with the day-to-day queries, requests regarding this genotyping tool. But I'm just going to hand over to Jim very quickly, just to give you a bit more background on the system. So Jim is my director, Dr. Jim Wheel.
Oh, that's very formal, Nick. A room full of doctors. So. Hello, everybody. My name's Jim Wheel. I was involved with the production of this software from the beginning. Just to give a bit of background that Nick has asked for, I think Enghwa has covered what needs to be achieved in the future. One of the key aspects of this software, as you'll see as we go through it, is Scriptoria. The company that designed it is really focused not simply on producing data systems, databases that are cutting edge, but that are very user-friendly. So an aspect of this system is it's very easy for you to see the pathway that you follow, what you need to do, what you need to input, and a lot of thought has been put into little tricks and tips like the autofill, etc., the automatic fill-in of the plate. That will save time. So it hopefully turns a job that can be, hours of work into something significantly quicker. The whole thing has been built using, as I say, cutting edge technologies, the latest software languages, etc. So the integration that Enghwa talks about for the future is a much simpler process. Nick, I'll hand it back to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Jim. So for the purpose of this demonstration, we're going to take you through the demo site. So the test site, we have a live site separate to this, but we'll be taking you through the site, which is exactly the same. It's identical to the live site that will eventually be the sort of formal go-to system. Right, so you'll end up on this page. You can all see my screen clearly, right? Just double checking.
Yes, we can see it, Nick.
At the moment. Great. Okay, fantastic. So you'll start off on this page. If you are new to the site, if you don't already have a profile set up, you can simply select this button at the bottom to request system access, right? So if I select that, you'll just be required to fill in your details, and then hit that submit button at the bottom. The admin and the staff on our side, we will receive that request and will duly set up a profile for the new user. Right, so that's the starting point. Then if you, as with most systems, if you forget your password, you can simply request access by selecting the forgot password button. Otherwise, you'll start off by entering your credentials, so your email address, and then your password, right? So once I log in, you'll start off on this overview page. So very important to note your contact details on the right-hand side. Just ensure that your information here is accurate, because as Jim mentioned, this will be used for various other steps in the process to autofill information in other parts of this process, which I will also take you through. So we want to ensure that our details are accurate here. We have a quick overview of our activities requests here as well on the left-hand side. You can get more information by selecting View All My Requests on the left-hand side of your screen, this bottom section here. And here you'll see an overview of all the requests that you have active at the moment. So you'll see these are color-coded. This dashboard is color-coded. You'll see that certain requests here are still in progress. They are incomplete. So what is quite nice about the system, you can begin a request and you can save it and log out, and your information won't be lost. You can pick up from where you last stopped your request procedure. You'll also see here there are other sort of status colors that we've used for shipping signed off. We don't see a red. Oh, here we go. So if a request has been rejected, this is highlighted in bright red. So that is also quite useful just to get a quick overview of your activities essentially. But what I want to do now is take you through the procedure step by step when one would like to submit a new request. So let's look at a low density request here on the left-hand side. So I'll just navigate to this left-hand panel and I will begin by selecting a new LDSG request. Right, just to note importantly, throughout each step in this process, you will need to save, select the save button in the top left-hand corner of this page, right? So that is the sort of go-to once each page is complete. You'll see that at each step, once you have completed a section, this little status bar at the top will change to completed, and it will also change to the color green. If you haven't completed information in a section, you will not be able to save until the required information has been completed. So this first overview page, this instructions page, basically gives you a very summarized version of what I'm going to take you through now. So it explains each tab briefly, what is required, what is expected. So you can go through that in your own time or use that as a reminder. Once I've read through this information and I understand this information, I will select these two check boxes here, right? So I've agreed to the instructions and the T's and C's, and I will select save, right? So this is the first time I'm selecting the save button, and there will a confirmation pop-up will appear on your screen, right? So now I want to update or at least submit my information, my personal information. As I mentioned, quite helpfully, the system has an autofill option or feature. So this pulls information from my my information page, that first page I showed you, my details page. So I can simply select autofill my contact details. I would just go through this information again to make sure that this is all accurate, right? It's optional to include an alternative contact. That is not mandatory. This information at the top is the most important information. And then we have the invoicing information, which is also required, right? So these are required fields highlighted with these little red bars. I will select my payment method, right? So for instance, here, I will select charge account, and then I will include the account code, right? So let's say that is just simply 4321 for this demonstration. Once again, optional to include an alternative contact for invoicing. And I can see now that this information has been complete, right? There are no more required fields, missing information, and I can select save. Right, so here you can see already these status bars at the top for each step are now changing to completed. Right, so the order number is automatically generated. I can now go ahead and start including information on the order details, the lab order details. So let's say, for instance, here I'm going to request testing for cassava. The analysis type, I'll select SNP verification, and then the lab that I would like to select. I've got 3 options, so let's select the first option. And then any additional comments, once again, that is optional, but if there are any further comments to add, you have the opportunity to add comments here, right? And once again, I return to the top left-hand corner of my screen to select save, right? I receive confirmation. Right, now you enter the plate information. We require plates, the plate IDs to be generated here. Just to note, there is a limit of 250 plates. So if I were in this instance to select 251, a warning note will appear to warn me that there is a maximum of 250 plates. So that is to protect the system. Essentially, the system will pretty much crash if I had to select more than 250 plates. So let's
in fact, what happens, just to jump in there, Nick, is
sure.
What happened is some users would actually accidentally select 2,510. They'd put a 0 in, and the system will then generate 2,500 plates, which you don't want. So this was just a little thing that the team asked for, to limit the plates to 250 so that people can't accidentally generate thousands of plates and then need to deal with that. Back to you, Nick.
Great. Thanks, Jim. So right, let's say, for instance, here I'm going to select plates 1 to 6 for, let's say, field 1 in this instance. I can then select a separate set of plates. So let's say from 7 to 12, and this will be for field number 2, right? And let's do one more, right? 13 to, let's say, 20, and this will be for field 3, right? So once I've completed that information, so right, this ID should be unique to each plate, right? You should select a unique identifier for each plate. I will select my save button again. I'll see at the bottom here, right, the success pop-up will appear, and this will automatically complete the next 2 steps in this process. So these are overview tables, right? So once again, I have my plate ID listed in the first column, the well location, and then the sample ID for each well. So once again, you can scroll through this very quickly just to confirm that this information is indeed accurate. And then we have the layout, right? So this sort of visual schematic of each plate with each well, right? Our 2 controls in the bottom right-hand corner. So yeah, once again, you can scroll through these just to confirm that these are accurate. But this information has essentially pulled from step number 3 in this process. Right, so next up, I can see that step number 6 is still incomplete. Here, I will need to include the SNP IDs or the SNP info. So here, the number of 96 format plates, this is being automatically generated. Number of SNPs, this is currently reading as 0, but this will update once I've included my Intertext SNP IDs below. Right, so there's some instructions here at the top just to be aware of. You will need to visit the website, EIB's website, to locate the relevant IDs. So you can simply just select this link on the page and scroll down to the crop of interest. So in this example, we were looking at cassava. So that will automatically download this Excel document. I open that up, and then I will select the SNP ID. So let's say, for instance, sorry, I just need to select enable editing. I'll select that SNP ID, copy, and I will paste that in here. Right, the customer ID, that again should be unique. So that could be customer 1, for example. I can, let's say, include another one. Let's select that example. I can add a new row, right? And that will be, let's say, customer 1A, and that will be customer 1B, right? So once that information has been included, I can select my save button once the required fields have been completed. And now I'm essentially ready to submit this, right, for approval. Right, so here I can see the submit button has now changed to this bright green. If I select that, so before I do that, perhaps let's go to view all my requests to see that this is still incomplete at this stage, right? So this order number ending in 53 is still incomplete. So let's say, for instance, I log out, I go off, do my thing, and then return to this platform and select, I can return to this last step and select the submit button. And my job for now as the service user is done, right? I can see that the status of my request has changed to under review. And now this is with the powers that be to decide if this is indeed acceptable or not, or if there are any issues that may need to be rectified. So on my other screen, so you're looking at my second screen, I've got the admin profile open. So I'm going to demonstrate what might happen if I were to reject this request due to the invoice code, right? So the invoice code might require updating, for instance. So that's that charge account code. I might, as the administration person, I might say that this code is invalid, right? And this needs to be updated, for example. So let me just, yeah. So I will be able, as the admin, as the decision maker, I will be able to add a comment, and this will reach the service user so that they can respond to this comment if there is an issue that needs to be addressed. Right, so I've rejected this service request. I've added a comment. So let's see what shows up on the service user's side. So let me just refresh this page. Right, so this has changed to rejected. If I open, right, so if you want to return to this, I should have noted earlier, if you want to return to this request, the link to access the details and the information is under this column here, order number. You can see that is hyperlinked. If I open that up, right, oh, I forgot to send the comment, apologies. Let me go back to this step here, right, and refresh. So if I open this up, I go to comments, this final tab here, comments and sign off. I will see here, this comments number has changed from 0 to 1. So that notifies me as a service user that there is a comment from the decision maker. And here I can see charge account code. Oh dear, I wrote that incorrectly, invalid. Right, so I might state here, right. Sorry, Jim, did you want to say something?
No, not at all. No,
Okay.
no. Everything is clear from our side. I can see that you've rejected it. Charge account code is invalid. So you'll reply back.
Right. So we will update this code accordingly. Right. So once this has been rejected, it's not to say that the status can't change to approved. Right. You just obviously need to communicate clearly with the decision maker. Right. So I'll state here, we will update this accordingly. Right, so I've responded. Now it's my duty to return to this step here and address this issue. So let's say, for instance, this was actually meant to be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? and I can select save right here. Right, and then once again, I will need to select the submit button to resubmit this request now that I've made this change. Right, so here, once I've selected submit, this is changed from rejected to under review. Right, so the admin or the decision maker will receive a notification that the service request has been submitted again. Right, I, as the decision maker, will return to my platform to once again review this request, and then I will respond, all is in order, and I will sign off now because that code is now correct. So let's sign off. Right, let's refresh this page, and now I will see this request has been changed to sign off, and I, as a service user, will receive a notification that this has been signed off. And now, once again, the duty lies with me to return to this request. And here I will see that the required information falls under the shipping section now. Right, so I select the shipping button, and here I will begin inputting the shipping details, the courier information, right, my tracking number, departure city, departure date, right, so let's say that'll be next week sometime, and then any additional comments, once again, that is optional. Right, I will also need to print the shipping form, right, to go along with the samples, of course. So that can be printed or generated automatically. Let's see that. Right, so print shipping form. Right, so here we go. Now I have the option to print this form, print a hard copy, and send that off with the sample, with the samples. So I can return back to this main page here, right? I can save the shipping information. And now, once again, I can see that the status in the top right-hand corner has changed to shipping. And once again, the ball is now in the court of the decision maker, or at least this this information has now been sent across to the laboratory, right? So let's return to this overview page, and I will see that this has changed. The status for request has changed to shipping. Right. So now this final tab, and this is not anything that the service user needs to worry about. This is information that the lab will update, right? So the lab order number, lab customer number, etc. This is information that will be provided by the lab. And you are able to download the overview of the information submitted to the lab using these two buttons in the top right-hand corner. So if I'd like to view a PDF, which again just gives an overview of what the lab has received, right? So I can see details on the plates, the well location, sample IDs, and so on and so forth. I also have the option to print that out or download that in Excel format. Right. Okay, so let me just refresh on the other side. So let's say, for instance, I'm just going to put in some dummy information just to save a bit of time. On the lab side, I am updating the information you're seeing on this lab sheet section, right? And I'm going to select the save button. Right, so now this will change from shipping, right? So let's change that to reports sent, right? So now this will indicate that a report will be sent to the service user based on the lab analyses. So let's go to this overview page, and here again I can confirm that a report has been sent. So I can expect that report to end up with me at some point in time. So here I can see the sort of full life cycle of this process from end to end, and where information is required from the service user.
Great.
Right. Yeah, I know that's a lot to cover in a short space of time, but are there any questions, comments, any steps that you'd like me to repeat, or any information that I should clarify?
One thing I'll just clarify.
Maybe we can unmute the users so they can ask directly.
Yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free to put that in the chat box. If you wanted to ask that in person, please raise your hand so we will be able to unmute you. Thanks.
Ismael.
Thank you. This is very good. I think it streamlines a lot of the submission processes. One thing I wanted to find out is those submission documents that are for import. For example, if you want to send to Australia, there's a certain form which you fill declaring that these samples have been freeze-dried and they adhere to a certain regulatory requirements and so on. Can that also be included here so that we don't have to look for that document all the time?
So I can take that, Ismail. So yes, that certainly, because that import requirement, that form is a static form. So periodically it does get updated. So what we'll likely do is in the future, we'll add that in the shipping section. I'm envisioning that based on the lab you selected, you can also download those exemptions. So it's sort of like one place, so that you can't really be wrong in printing the wrong forms and then it's not the right one going to the lab. So that's something that we're looking into for the next iteration.
Cool, thank you.
There are two questions in the chat box. One is from Bashir. It's asked like, based on what you choose the SNP ID. So I provided the CAS link in the chat box. You can go to the particular crop and you choose your trait of interest, and then you can choose that particular SNP corresponding to your gene of interest. So that's for the Bashir. And there is one more question from Virendra Babu. Is there any option to select few SNPs at a time? We are not very clear, Virendra. Can you ask that question in person, please? Okay,
Hello,
we see Ismail rise to. Yeah, Virendra, go ahead.
Is Gajanan here?
Yeah, Gajanan.
I guess he means that can we upload batch SNP details like at a time rather than at a time one SNP? Like suppose we have QC SNP 100 SNP list. So can we upload 100 SNPs list at a time, or we have to upload it one by one only?
Yeah, currently we don't have that feature. Ying, do you want to comment on this?
But then in case of mid density, it will be difficult to upload the huge number.
No, for mid density, you don't want to upload all the SNP. You just wanted to select the mid density panel name so that the vendor will do the genotyping. Ying, you wanted to comment on the batch processing of the SNP ID?
Yeah, so a more elegant system without having to have the users click on that EIB website link and go to another site and download the crop markers will be a high priority for us on the next iteration, because we need to have a database to house all the marker IDs, the updated ones, because they do get updated and changed from time to time as we continue to optimize these markers. So having there's always the risk of users downloading a static file and you keep it there. And then the next time when for the same marker trait, we have a new version of that marker that may or may not get captured. And then, there's a potential error that we may use the old ID. So that's one feature that we know is a critical functionality that we'll have that. And also quite likely that depending on how the system will be redesigned, depending on the crop species you select, I envision that we would like to have a more seamless integration with the market database, where if you selected rice, then when you want to fill up the SNP ID, all the available lists of SNP IDs for rice would just drop down, and you can select from there in a quick way. And potentially also maybe a clone feature where you can, if you want to routinely submit jobs for like 20 SNPs and you want to do it every single season, we could also think about ways to sort of like just clone that job and change the samples. So that to save you time. Right now, it's like I said, it's the minimum viable implementation. These are all part of the plan and should be available in the next iteration, one way or the other. Hope that answers your question.
Thanks. There is a question for you from Stefan.
Yes.
Can you say a bit more on the integration to EBS?
Sure. Yeah. So Stefan asked if what would be the integration plan for EBS. So yes, actually a few weeks ago, we had discussions with the EBS team. This is also part of the milestone 7 plan, to have that integration with shared services. Now, we certainly want to start planning for a handover point, whereas if users have already created the experiment in the EBS system, we should be able to port over the job directly. We are handling slightly different types of information here because we have invoicing informations and all that. But we certainly do not want to have users to have double the job, double the work, just because each system handles a fraction of the work, and we need all information together in order to submit the job. So we'll likely in step 1, 2, or 3, somewhere there, build a connecting piece where we can port over information from EBS. So the reason why the system was initially designed as such, where the sample IDs and plate IDs were system generated, is because from a system standpoint, it's thinner, and we can avoid a lot of potential errors if we were to allow an open-ended portal for users to upload their sample IDs, because sometimes they could be special characters or sample ID length, and it would cause the system to crash. Because there's also endless ways that the IDs could actually cause confusions in the genotyping services. Like, for example, we can have sample 1 to 90 on plate 1, again, sample 1 to 90 on plate 2. So they could be different samples, or there could be the same sample. In the system's eye, sample 1 is sample 1. So in that case, is that sample 1 on plate 1 the same as sample 1 in plate 2, or they're completely different? We don't know that. So to cut out those potential errors, we have decided to come with a more streamlined option, is to support the system auto-generate the IDs. And users will always have, you can see on this screen here, the feature to download sample list on the Excel format. Now, if you hit the download feature, you'll have an Excel file based on the job you submitted, and then internally you can manage however way you want to name the samples and link that and keep it to yourself. Because sometimes if you were to use like pedigree informations and things like that to identify the sample, we don't necessarily need to know that information in order to submit a job. So that becomes, yours to keep, and we don't need to handle any sensitive information unnecessarily. Again, we want to make sure that we only pass on the required information to trigger a job with a service vendor. So there's no point for us to pass on additional information back and forth, because that actually adds confusions and transaction costs. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Singh. There's a question from Gabby. I guess this is for Nick. Could you please repeat the sample list step?
Sure. So yeah, as I'm showing on my screen now, so once this process has been complete and a report has been sent retrospectively, you cannot go back and download the sample list. So I've had to just continue with this incomplete submission to download this sample list in Excel. Right, so here we can see it's loading in the bottom left-hand corner. So this Excel will essentially look the same as this overview table here. And this gives one an overview of, once again, the well location and the equivalent sample ID for each well. So it's quite a long list here. You can see one of 10 pages. And this presents, or at least this is represented in the plate layout as well. So I'm just waiting for that Excel to open. It should open shortly. Right, there we go. So yeah, here again, I can see the plate ID, right? So this is for plate 1. These are the well locations, and these are the sample IDs that have been generated automatically. If I go to my plate layout, yeah, as I mentioned, this will give sort of a bird's eye view of these wells as well. Were there any specific steps or parts of this, Gabby, that you wanted to cover?
Not really, because my connection was a bit down when you went through this particular step. So,
Okay.
It means that once you have download that, yeah, do you have to fill it automatically in the sheet, or you can fill the download sheet and then upload it later? So that's where it was not very clear for me.
So you can download it. Yeah, I suppose. I mean,
just to clarify, Nick, what Gabby's saying is, I think that her internet, she lost connection when you were filling in the plate IDs, so she hasn't seen this step of add a plate ID with a number and then a field name. So maybe you could add a new plate row just to show you, Gabby. You would come to this point, you would add a plate. Nick's adding a new plate row at the moment, but this would be the first step as well. He's going to call it field 2, which allows you can use any identifying name you want. And then he's going to save it to the system. And there you go. It's generated. We just say success. That field now is part of the plate IDs below. The Excel download sheet, as Eng was just saying, is purely for your own records. It's just an easy way to keep a record of what you've submitted.
Okay.
And yeah, and if you have different names, if you name these samples differently internally, what you can do is download that Excel quickly, and then you can put your own sample names against them so that you can cross-reference in the future and you know what you're talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Back to you, Nick.
Yeah, so once the plate IDs, once the section has been completed, as I showed a bit earlier, these 2 steps, step 4 and 5, are automatically completed. And yeah, then you can confirm that this information is correct. And as Jim mentioned, yeah, downloading this as an Excel file for your own records is an additional step that you can follow.
Yep, I think that's covered everything, Nick. That's great. Rajaguru, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jim and Nick. So there is a question from Brijay. I think partly answered. Maybe I'll take that question. How do you generate the unique IDs for the intertech? If you see, Brijay, the sample IDs, those were unique for one particular order. If you are talking about the uniqueness between orders, there will be a unique ID for each order. So when you combine the unique order ID with your sample ID, that's going to be your unique ID for across the job as well. So we discussed this while developing the system. Probably Nick or Ing, if you want to add something on that, feel free.
So, right, does that mean that this unique code is usually required by Intertech? And does that mean that it's not required anymore? It's a combination of numbers and letters.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so previously we don't have such a system. That's the reason, from Galaxy instance or from other softwares, you generate a separate unique ID, which is an alphanumeric. Right now, if you see here, there is already a unique ID generated as a sample ID. So if you wanted to have your own sample name or additional unique ID, you can, add that in the customer sample name, which is completely optional. I hope this answered your question, Vijay.
Okay, so the customer sample name is my genotype.
Yes.
Name.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's option. Yeah.
And you can do that right here without having to download this Excel. You can update that automatically with using this edit button here. And then once you download the Excel, that will also reflect in the Excel whatever information you've included.
You can also make comments and reminders to yourself. So here, there's this comment optional. If you want to put a comment at the top of a particular set, for instance, just to remind yourself of some thinking, that again will be available in the report. So if you download the Excel and fill in the Excel, that's only for your own use. But if you want to add some notes and comments here at the database level, that will persist through the system and always be available to you.
Yeah, thanks. So there is a question from Ismail. I think he's also raised his hands. So the question is, on the sample file, is the user allowed to upload your own file? Is that the question, Ismail, or you have additional questions?
Yeah, it's not very clear. I mean, from the answer I've had to Gabi's question, it seems like this sample ID is auto-generated. And then if you want to have your own genotype name, for example, you can add it there by using that edit button, but assume you're submitting 1536 samples. So how do you individually do that? Or do we need to have our own individual databases that we can use now to match to these sample IDs generated here?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
In that case, Ismail, if you wanted to give a lot of sample names for you to track yourself, then you would download the Excel sheet and you would just copy and paste your names into the relevant columns as you normally would in Excel. So you can track them in that way.
Yeah, so as we said in the chat, so Ismail, you can see in the screen, so you can download just the sample list Excel, but you have to put exactly the information as it is, so you can't change columns. So it's just a matter of copy paste, but have to be very careful, definitely. But it's something that we can improve later.
I think the lab or this platform should consider the other option of uploading your own sample file that has the exact column names as has been stipulated here, and maybe with the auto-generated sample IDs, because we don't want to go through another step again of data mergings before you do analysis, because these sample IDs are meaningless because they are not connected to your genotype that you want to run your analysis on. So having those extra steps creates room for errors.
Yeah, understand, Ismail, and this is well noted, so it's something that it will be worked on.
Yep, this has been noted as part of the system. Of course, the creation of these sample IDs cuts out a lot of potential errors, but what can be done is the system in the future could generate these sample IDs like this, give you the option to download the Excel sheet and allow you to paste into the customer sample the data that you want, the customer sample name, re-upload the Excel sheet, and then it will add that data to this column. That can be done, and that's a request that's under consideration. The users then have to be very careful. There's a lot of what's known as validation in the programming, because people can't change the other columns, as Anna said. And also, if they make mistakes when people are copy and pasting their own data in their column sample name, and they don't notice, they'll be introducing those errors in the system. It won't matter to the lab analysis, because the lab will essentially ignore this column, but it can be done. I think, as Eng said earlier, this was the minimum viable product. This was the simplest first step in addressing everybody's needs, and then, as good comments like yours are raised, Ismail, they'll be addressed in the future.
Yep, and just to add to that, Jim, I know that this for people for the breeding programs already in some kind of database, it may seem like it's a double work, which is why we're here to help you. And really, if it's just a two-step merging process, if you can manage it for the next 2-3 jobs, I'm pretty sure we'll have a more elegant way to manage the merging in the coming months. But do note that we have also a very large user base that are outside of any breeding database system. Now, if we need to roll out the system and design it in such a way that we have to link to all the possible features out there, or enable an upload feature, it can potentially cause a lot of issues when the IDs clashes and things like that. So we're trying to avoid that as a trade-off that they're willing to take on the first minimum viable implementation. But as we are better structured, and certainly we want to make sure that the people already formally in some kind of breeding databases will have the ability to port over the IDs without having to do the double work. That's something that we will be talking to the various breeding databases to see how can we make that connecting pieces. I also see that there are a few questions on the chat box. I'm not sure if I'm going down the right order here. There's a question around the Cas markers. Is it possible to get primer sequences with terminating SNPs that confers of trait of interest? Not sure why that is needed, but if you do want to know about the Cas marker information, go to the marker list. I guess that's the SNP info on 6 here. If you click on the link, you navigate over to the EIB site, you click on your crop, you will be able to see the marker information. The information is not, we're still organizing the information. Some are more complete, some are not. Some, most of them actually, they are published markers. They're citations, they are position information. So you can actually figure out where those markers are.
So maybe, Eng, you can show another crop where the information is more complete, because this is connected to IRRI. So one that is completely, like, for example, the banana or even cassava, that it was recently updated. So they can see that
let's go to cassava then.
Yeah, you can go to. So you can see the contact. So in this case, for example, for cassava, the contact is Ismail. So if you want sequences, if you want much more information that is already here, that is all the information that you need really to understand where are the markers and for what they are, and how to use it, you contact Ismail, and he will be able to provide the information that you need. I think that is the best, because I think all this great work was also done by the breeders and molecular breeders, so they are the ones that should be contacted. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Anna. And we are almost up to time here. There's another question about information about pricing and payment. So currently on the services, we have 2 options to make payments. I think if you go to the, I think the customer information, that's number 1, Nick.
Sure, sorry, customer
Or,
info.
yeah, I think there's an invoicing information on if you scroll down a little bit there. Yes, we have a charge account option. Of course, depending on the future services, right now our low and mid density services, we have two options. Charge account is basically a lot of people opted for this one. Is actually more simple. You can set up a prepaid account. Let's say $5,000-$10,000 you can preload this with the vendors, and then it gets subtracted as you draw down your own charge account, which you maintain based on whoever owns that charge account. You'll be given a specific code that you manage. The other option is by invoicing. For every job you send, you have acknowledged on the first landing page when you created the order that those two tick boxes, the terms and conditions. Once you have acknowledged that, once you fill in this information in order to proceed, you have acknowledged that basically this is the pricing, this is a system that you need to submit system in such a way, and these are the service parameters. Once you acknowledge that, an invoice will be sent to you 30 days after service delivery, and then you have I think 30 days to make the payments. That's sort of the service terms and conditions that we have for these services. Now, in terms of pricing, it's a little bit hard to give you a pricing. We do have a pricing schedule, which it depends on the type of services and many other parameters that we had to factor in. Whether you're sending samples in batches of 384 or 1536, or you need extra work. So the best for us to provide you with the most close to true value pricing is to reach out to us, or make a comment during the submission, and then we'll respond to you to give you an estimate pricing based on what you have ordered. So for low density, for example, you can select 1 markers to 1,000 markers. It's up to you. Of course, that will be based on the pricing that we have based on your type of service setup you're requesting. For the mid density right now, it's more of a fixed pricing as long as you're submitting job by 384 or 1536. That's our service framework right now. So, okay, we are at the top of the hour. To respect everybody's time, I guess we'll have to end this, and the call is recorded. We'll have all these Q&As in the chat captured, and we'll also be providing a summary and the recording on our website in the coming days. So thanks, everyone.
Great.
Great.
Great,
Thank you very
thanks.
much, everybody.